InvestorIdeas.com podcasts.
Good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of InvestorIdeas.com podcast. Today's podcast is sponsored by Cannabis Swiss Corporation, trading on the OTC as CSUI, a fully licensed cannabis cultivation and distribution company in Switzerland for recreational tobacco products and medical CBD oils. The company's products are laboratory tested to ensure the end users have access to a standardized, safe, and consistent product. And Cannabis Swiss Corp currently sells via distribution network of Swiss retailers and online shops under the retail brand Alpine Cannabis. In today's podcast, we're going to be looking at a few private as well as public company announcements, looking at Clever Leaves International Incorporated, DELC Holdings Incorporated, PCLO Limited, trading on the TSXV Venture as PCLO and the OTCQX as PCLOF, as well as Namaste Technologies Incorporated, trading on the TSX Venture as N and the OTC as NXTTF. First, starting with Clever Leaves International, a leading multinational operator and licensed producer of pharmaceutical-grade cannabinoids, who provided an update on their current international footprint by announcing successful exportation of cannabis products to 14 different countries and 5 continents as of the fourth quarter of 2020. Now, the products range from raw materials, including active pharmaceutical ingredients, and semi-finished products, including white label products. Now, Clever Leaves International Network highlights the company's ability to maintain important partnerships with regulatory agencies and governments, as well as the ability to navigate pandemic-related supply chain setbacks. And in compliance with all cannabis regulations in the countries served, the company's portfolio of products has been exported to Australia, Brazil, Canada, Chile, the Czech Republic, Germany, Israel, Netherlands, Peru, Poland, Spain, South Africa, the UK, and the US. Most of the international cannabis industry functions like a pharmaceutical channel, requiring significant investments of time and focus by both a supplier such as Clever Leaves and its commercial partners throughout the world. Now, success depends on navigating nascent but strict regulatory systems, and relationships often require initial small batch or sample shipments of validation before larger partnerships can emerge. Now, COVID-19 has introduced new challenges even when it comes to basic transportation logistics. And these milestones across our export network strengthen our ability to deliver value to our business partners and to patients around the world, said Kyle Detweiler, the CEO of Clever Leaves. Now, the resilience, professionalism, and creativity in times of setback have been critical to the success of our team to navigate complex regulatory frameworks and to meet customers' deadlines during a time of unparalleled logistical restrictions. Additionally, we are grateful to work and partner with local regulatory agencies and logistics service providers who share the same goal to bring high-quality medical cannabis products to patients and are committed to the advancement of the global cannabis market, said Andres Fajardo, the president of Clever Leaves. Now, the company was granted their EU GMP certification for cannabis extracts in July of 2020, establishing Clever Leaves facilities in Colombia as the first and only operation to be granted EU GMP certification in Latin America, and one of the select few in the world. The certification, which will generally be required to import medical cannabis products into the European Union, allows Clever Leaves to produce API, semi-finished, and finished products to be distributed in pharmaceutical channels. And additionally, in August, Clever Leaves was granted a provisional license in Portugal for Informed and Portuguese Health Authority that allowed Clever Leaves to cultivate, import, and export dry flower for medicinal and research purposes. Now, Clever Leaves recently announced that it's amended its definite agreement with Schultz Special Purpose Acquisition Corporation, trading on the NASDAQ as SAMA, pursuant to which a newly formed holding company, Clever Leaves Holdings Incorporated, will acquire SAMA and Clever Leaves. And the transaction is expected to close on the fourth quarter of 2020, with Holdco anticipated to become a NASDAQ-listed public company trading under the ticker symbol CLRVR. So you can be looking for Clever Leaves International probably by year end to be trading on the NASDAQ. So this goes in line with what I've been talking about for a while, which is obviously the international expansion of this industry. Clever Leaves obviously getting into a lot of different countries and continents. I would say their EU GMP certification in Colombia, PharmaCielo, Chiron Life Sciences, as well as One World Pharma also have EU GMP certification in Colombia, so not the only one within that state or within that country, as well as there's many other EU GMP certified facilities in Latin America. And there continues to be more throughout the world. That is the new standard. Again, I've talked about that in the past, where companies who are ignoring those EU GMP certifications are going to have difficulties in the global compliance state when it comes to this market really expanding globally. And this is what we're really starting to see now, is now that it does seem like this industry is not anywhere near close to slowing down, and it is going to expand globally within the next 2 years. Again, I've talked about the Safe Banking Act in the U.S., which is very much expected to pass through within the next 2 years. as well as more and more countries are at least beefing up their medical programs, or at least allowing for medical research and testing, importing and exporting. So I do expect within about the next 2 years, you're going to see a pretty robust global cannabis industry. Some companies are planning on playing within that market. Some companies are still focusing on local assets. I do think that the locally asset focused companies are going to have a lot of difficulty when it comes to price point comparisons, as well as their distribution. Again, I've talked a lot about Israel and Colombia being very aggressive competitors within the global space just due to their growing conditions, as well as their massive amount of well-trained human resources that they have within those companies compared to North America, compared to most of Europe, and even compared to Canada. So it is something that I do think they're going to have a significant advantage, and the price points they're aiming at are preposterous compared to Canadian or US or European-based companies. So again, companies like Clever Leaves International are definitely going to be those competitors within that space, focusing on international distribution hubs. And so far, they do seem to be doing a good job. So I would expect that once they do list on the NASDAQ, there will be a lot of anticipation and excitement around that. Speaking of another company that's going to be listing, DELC Holdings Incorporated, a psychedelic-focused media, e-commerce, and event company, announced that effective of the market open today, the company has begun trading on the Canadian Securities Exchange under the ticker symbol DELC. Now, Jackie Stang, CEO of DELC, comments that Canada has consistently shown leadership in helping cannabis and now psychedelics emerge from false stigmas. Canada was the first G7 country to legalize cannabis, and as psychedelics further gain ground on what may appear a false stigma, the health and wellness sector will only grow. And as such, DELC community is deeply proud to be part of the Canadian Securities Exchange, and we started DELC to mainstream the psychedelic conversation, advocate for cognitive freedom, and ultimately see an end to the war on drugs. Now, Mr. Stang continued, as the first ever psychedelic wellness corporation, it's our mission to open the doors to psychedelic healing to the masses. We decided to take DELC public because we believe that psychedelic wellness should be open to everyone, all people from diverse backgrounds and varied life experiences. Now, DELC is the first ever psychedelic wellness company designed to disrupt the status quo by diversifying our operations, maintaining sensible messaging, and intentionally avoiding dogmatic practices or binary rhetoric. We believe in being pragmatic and maintaining a clear-headed approach as the psychedelic sector continues to build. Now, in conjunction with the previously announced business combination with Molly Star Resources, DELC raised $3,475,000 through a non-brokered private placement offering. And on November 17th, the company issued an aggregate of $3,450,000 options to directors, officers, and certain advisors pursuant to the company's share compensation plan, each at an exercise price of 25 cents, vesting as a third of such options on each of the 6, 12, and 18 months anniversaries and expiring in 3 years. So more psychedelic companies coming to the public markets. Again, I do think that that's going to be another trend you're going to see consistently. I do think that the psychedelic industry has probably about 3 or 4 years before it's going to be anywhere near well established or built out. As I've mentioned before, it's definitely advancing much more aggressively than the cannabis industry, mainly in part due to what the cannabis industry has already built out internationally as well as in North America. It looks like Canada is going to have some sort of legalization or decriminalization, or at least special medical conditions surrounding psilocybin or LSD and MDMA within the next 2 years. Similarly, several states in the U.S. looks like that could be on next potential ballots as well. And internationally, there are lots of places in the Netherlands as well as in other parts of Europe that are starting to look at least having, again, a decriminalizing of psilocybin or having it for certain medical exceptions. I do think that the certain medical exceptions is what you're going to see most likely. And I think that those exceptions are going to get looser and looser over the course of the years, but I don't think that you're going to have access to psychedelics really without medical clinics, or at least without data. That's the main thing that seems to be surrounding this industry still, is people still want to collect the data on how these are influencing the mind, how they're influencing medicine, and how they can be better dosed and positioned in later sort of clinical trials. I do think that it's smart to focus obviously on the sort of messaging. So you're going to see probably a lot more media and event focused companies like DELC showing up. But again, I do think that this industry is it's going to be a lot of talk and a lot of bluster going on surrounding the psychedelics for quite some time. And it does seem to ignore the fact that for quite some time, there is an illegal market that's been heavily taking psychedelics and has continued to take psychedelics for years. That obviously is already still doing that, and as laws become more loose, they feel a lot more confident doing that. So I do wonder if the legal market will have much traction, or if it will just be people now having the freedom to no longer have to hide the fact that they're already doing psychedelics. I would be interested to see if, similarly to what we barely saw in cannabis, if in the psychedelic industry they do start looking for expertise from the illicit market to bring in as experts into the legal market. That does seem to be a little harder to find based on the legality of things right now, but hopefully they do a better job of that than the cannabis industry did. Next, looking at PCLO Limited, who announced that it's delivered its first commercial shipment of medical grade CBD isolate to a well established bulk distributor and white label manufacturer based in the UK, with sales and distribution operations in the UK and the EU. In addition, the company has reached an interim sales agreement with the customer lasting until the end of Q1 2021, at which point PharmaCielo expects to have submitted a novel foods authorization application for its range of CBD extracts. The interim renewable agreement enables continued shipments for the remainder of 2020 and calls for a shipment of up to 1,000 kilograms of CBD isolate and broad spectrum CBD based on the customer specifications during the Q1 of 2020. As consumers' demand for health and wellness products containing cannabinoids continues to expand, PharmaCielo is well positioned to deliver a portfolio of medical-grade extracts at scale and serves the needs of the global CBD marketplace facing providers, said David Attard, the CEO of PharmaCielo Limited. Having focused to date on building a world-class infrastructure in Colombia, as well as developing a robust product portfolio, we are ideally positioned to become a supplier of choice for large volume business-to-business sales globally. 2021 will be a very exciting year for the company as we significantly expand global export volumes and the addition of the customers' relationships throughout international market long-term, including the UK and EU support and focus. So PharmaCielo entering into the UK with CBD isolate. They're definitely not alone there, as far as Chiron Life Sciences and a few others who have been producing CBD isolate in the UK. I do think obviously the CBD market is just going to continue to explode. It's been on a real good rise for the last year and a half. Again, based off COVID and how people are now looking into health and wellness in a different way. Also based on the fact that, as I mentioned yesterday, with Valens Company and their basically clear, tasteless, odorless, invisible CBD isolate. As the technology and the science has progressed, CBD can now be placed in many more formats and many more drink or food options than it would have been before, in different salves and oils. And I do think that that range of products is also going to be what helps boost the CBD market into basically the regular market. I do think that it's only a matter of maybe a year to 2 years before you start seeing CBD based products in pretty much grocery stores and pharmacies almost everywhere. And it becomes, again, as casual as caffeine or sugar, in that it can just be in products. And realistically, it should be more casual than caffeine or sugar, as the health problems from CBD are pretty much zero, and health problems from caffeine and sugar are quite monumental. So I think it's about a year to maybe 2 years, and a lot of these companies that have, again, the international distribution, like a PharmaCielo, like Chiron Life Sciences, like many of the companies that are out there focusing on the EU marketplaces, I do think that they're well positioned to really start dominating. And the biggest thing is going to be brand consistency. Again, because there are so many CBD companies out there right now with so many different levels of quality for the CBD isolate, whether it's full spectrum, partial spectrum, or biosynthesized. I do think that customers within the next couple of years are going to start to actually have the expectations around what their CBD should contain, how it should be affecting their products, what dosage levels they're looking for. And some of the companies that, again, have a large international footprint, I think will be better equipped to meet those needs. Namaste Technologies, looking at them last, who announced it's entered into a share purchase agreement to acquire the remaining 49% interest in CanMart Labs, an application for the process license under the Cannabis Act for cannabis extraction activities. Now, Namaste will acquire the 49% of CanMart to 100% ownership. CanMart Labs facility in Ontario is completed for BHO extraction using leading extraction technology, making it one of the few facilities in Canada with such capabilities. The application in the final phase for a processing license from Health Canada, and set to produce in our house brand Cannabis 2.0 products for medical channel customers at canmart.com and recreational customers across Canada through their sister company CanMart Incorporated's network of professional sales partners. Now, in May of 2018, Namaste acquired 51% interest in CanMart Lab and agreed to finance the construction of its facility in Etobicoke, Ontario, a purpose-built oil extraction facility which incorporates a leading extraction technology facility designed to meet EU GMP manufacturing certification requirements. Now, acquiring the remaining interest in CanMart Labs is another important milestone achieved in establishing Namaste as a leading company within the Canadian cannabis sector, said Manny Moram, the Chief Executive Officer of Namaste. CanMart Labs is in the final stages of its application for an important processing license from Health Canada, and it's installed state-of-the-art extraction technology in its facility, which is granted a license which will be able to produce an array of cannabis products, including shatter and live resin, as well as future distillate products such as vape cartridges, gel capsules, tinctures, and edibles. Mr. Moram added, this transaction is advantageous to Namaste shareholders as the vendors will continue to provide management services and will receive an earn-out payments in the form of Namaste common shares or cash only upon the successful achievement of certain revenue and gross profit targets, and if the targets are met, the cash payment option allows Namaste to minimize dilution associated with the acquisition. We're working hard towards receiving our processing license from Health Canada to look forward to producing in-house branded Cannabis 2.0 products for our medical channel customers at canmart.com and recreational customers across Canada through a network of provisional sales partners. Now, under the terms of the agreement, Namaste will acquire the remaining 49% of CanMart Labs from MKD Holdings Incorporated and JLLS Holdings Incorporated in exchange for the purchase price of $4 million. The first tranche of the purchase price at $1.6 million will be paid to the vendors in common shares of Namaste issued at a deemed price equal to the 7-day volume weighted average of Namaste common shares on the TSX Venture Exchange. So Namaste going to be acquiring the full 100% of CanMart. I do think that's an obvious smart move for them and focusing on the Cannabis 2.0 products for in-house branded stuff, especially for the medical community. Still to date, when you're looking at the Canadian medical community, I've talked a lot about the Shoppers Drug Mart program, which has expanded massively over the last year, but still as far as 2.0 products is quite limited as far as the SKUs available. Still a lot of dried flowers, still a lot of pre-rolls, still a lot of there are some pretty cool Cannabis 2.0 products, obviously the dissolvable strips and some of the beverages, but in general haven't really focused heavily on the shatter or extracts, which a lot of people in the medical community are starting to look at, especially as they're looking at just general use on the daily. Smoking or vaping your shatter or your waxes is a little bit easier on the lungs, especially with the current medical devices that are out there as opposed to just dab rigs, but a lot easier on the body than having to smoke weed actually from a joint or from a bong as well. You get much higher potency levels, which is what the medical community is obviously looking for, and a lot better consistency and more terpenes and cannabinoids activated in your endocannabinoid system. So I do think obviously focusing on that, it's a necessary move. And hopefully you'll start to see more 2.0 products as well, like the live resin and shatter hitting the recreational market due to this transaction as well. But yeah, it's definitely a good move for Namaste and for CanMart. That's all for today's podcast. And once again, today's podcast is sponsored by Cannabis Swiss Corporation, trading on the OTC as CSUI, a fully licensed cannabis cultivation and distribution company in Switzerland for recreational tobacco products and medical CBD oils. That's all for today's podcast. Podcast is now a certified word trademark on the blockchain through Cognate Incorporated CM certification. InvestorIdeas.com podcasts are also available on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play Music, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and TuneIn. If you'd like to be a guest or sponsor of this podcast, please contact InvestorIdeas.com. Investor Ideas reminds all listeners to read our disclaimers and disclosures on the InvestorIdeas.com website, and this podcast is not an endorsement to buy products or services or securities. Investors are reminded that all investments involve risk and possible loss of investment. Investor Ideas does not condone the use of cannabis except where permissible by law. Our site does not possess, distribute, or sell cannabis products.